Hi, my name is Catherine Baker and I'm coming to you from almost the bottom of the world, Dunedin in New Zealand. Unless of course you're a flat earther and then it's just over the other side of the world, and in that case we really should talk because I'm also a science teacher. And this is my new YouTube channel that I've decided to start because I have got a dress I would like to present a pattern for. And so I thought, well, how's the best way to do that? And I know that anytime I want to figure out how to do something, I go to YouTube. So I decided I would attempt my first YouTube tutorial. So this tutorial is going to come in two parts. The first part is going to be designing and drawing up the pattern. It's a zero waste pattern, so it's one where you draw it out onto the fabric itself and then you cut it out and sew it. And then the second tutorial is going to be how to sew the dress together. Now the dress is one I've been dreaming up for a while. I love bias dresses, and obviously they're very on trend at the moment, but it really frustrates me that they don't have pockets, and you can't really put pockets on them because anytime you put pockets in a side seam and it's on the bias, you get a lot of gaping and it just doesn't work. So I thought there had to be a way without them being patch pockets. And I was dreaming it up for a while, and I was inspired by the Birgitta Helmsen book, The Zero Waste Patterns. And I suddenly thought, what if we don't put the pockets on the bias grain, but we put them on the straight grain? Can we create a dress like that? And so I played around with a few bits of paper and ended up coming up with a pattern with the pockets set into the straight grain on an angle. And it is this dress here. Some of you may have seen it on my Instagram account, which is called Autoporti Sews. So the pattern looks like this. I'll stand up so you can see it. This is the second version that I made in stripes, and stripes are quite cool because of the way the pattern goes. It has quite a cool effect. So the two bodice pieces obviously are on the bias like this, and then the main skirt piece goes right around, wraps itself all the way around down to a point at the back. That's all on the straight grain, which is nice, so it doesn't stretch out and it's nice and easy to sew. And the pockets are in here, so you can see they're pretty invisible. In the slightly slinkier fabric, they maybe tend to gape open a little bit more. And the pocket bags are attached to the skirt piece and just sit in there nice and snugly. And you can see that they don't really gape out. You can put a phone in them, and it's probably a little bit visible, but it's not too bad. And a slightly heavier weight fabric, they're definitely not visible. So the other version I made was a linen one. Now this version I have put elastic in here so that it doesn't gape at the neckline. The one I'm going to make today, I'm going to experiment with not putting elastic in, and we'll see how it looks. It's just a simple sleeveless dress, but you obviously could then add sleeves if you had some extra fabric. In terms of the fabric, it comes from a single rectangle, and I got this one out of 140 times 120 centimeters. There was a little bit of wasted fabric left over, but it was a remnant, so I just used what I needed to. It was a bit long, so I had to cut the bottom off. This one I made in a linen rayon fabric, and I'll pop a picture of me wearing them both up here so you can see what they look like full length. And this one is a bit of a heavier weight one, so it doesn't drape quite as much. I got this one out of a metre of fabric that was 145 centimetres wide. This one I put darts in the back and a little bow to cinch it in a little at the back. This was the first one I made that wasn't a 12, but I did actually make an error in this one because I cut the armholes too far back, so my back was too narrow. I wasn't intending it to be like a racer back like it looks, but then, you know, that's kind of cool too. So you do need something with a little bit of drape, but you can use a heavier weight fabric too to make it look a little more casual, or a more slinky, silky fabric to make it look more dressy. So the one I'm going to be making in the tutorial today is going to be a more silky fabric. It's a rayon challis. Okay, so we're going to start by talking about the supplies that you're going to need for this dress. First up, you're obviously going to need a tape measure to take measurements of your size, because the maths you're going to do and the pieces you cut out are going to be dependent on that. Need your fabric. Now I'd suggest not using a nice fabric the first time you make this. Don't cut straight into your beautiful silk. Make one out of some cheap fabric, an old sheet, a remnant you've got lying around, just to check the fit. I'm the only person who's made this dress so far, so it hasn't been tested on other sizes. So you're obviously going to be making it your own measurement, so it should fit, but don't go making it out of something lovely to start with. Now this is a bit of a weird one, but you need a large piece of paper folded into a triangle, and these fabric store bags are fabulous because they're very big, and you just basically need a right angled triangle because we need to create a 45-degree angle that we can use to rule out some of the pieces. And if you haven't got a large measuring device that will help with that, this is what I've come up with. Okay, the next thing you obviously need is your scissors, some paper scissors and your fabric scissors. You're going to need fabric pen or chalk to mark out on your fabric. Because this is a zero waste pattern, we don't use pattern pieces. We're just going to mark directly onto the fabric and cut it. Now your fabric obviously is going to be whatever size you've got, but it needs to be at least 110 centimeters in one direction, and then the other direction is going to be determined by your hip size calculation. In terms of the fabric that you want to use, it should be ideally a drapey fabric. I've got a challis, round challis here. I have also made one in a linen blend and in a crepe, which was really drapey. It should be opaque, so not see-through, because your dress won't be lined or you're going to need to wear a slip, or just have it see-through if you want to. The other thing I used in mine is I used some 6mm elastic, and I used that around the neckline just to make sure that it didn't gape. That's optional, you might find it fits fine without that. And then you just need your normal sewing supplies, so needles and pins. I used a couple of safety pins to put my elastic through. And I've just got here too a piece of A4 paper, pencil and a ruler, which you're going to use to draw out your layout to start with your measurements, so that when you go to lay them out onto the fabric, you've got everything ready to go. Okay, so that is your supplies. Okay, so the second step is taking your measurements. We need to have 3 measurements for this dress, and I'll just show you how they work on the dress. This is the first proper dress I made that wasn't a twirl, but it still is really a twirl because I made some errors around the underarms, and so I haven't got those quite balanced right. But this was made of a linen rayon. You can see it's got a little bit of drape, but not quite as much. But the 3 measurements you're going to need to take around your hips, so that's the widest part of your hips because that's the part that the dress needs to slip over. The bias will account for a lot of the rest of the dress fitting, but that's the main one that you want to get correct. That's my cute little pockets. The second one you want to take is the distance from the top of your shoulder down to where you want the V to finish at the front. And that will be a personal preference as to how low you want it to sit. It probably won't work if you want to have it really high. It does need to sit down sort of in between your bust, but obviously you can have it either nice and low, or you can have it a little bit higher. The last measurement you want to take is how wide you want it to sit across the back of your shoulders, or where you want your sort of 2 shoulder straps to go. This is what I got wrong on this one. You can see it's sort of turned into a bit of a racer back style. The second dress I made is wider and probably exactly how I want this one to sit and how wide I want it to be. So I'd suggest you measure that so that when you put your armholes in, you can get that correct. So let's go ahead and take those measurements. So the first one, around the hips. So that wants to be around the widest part of your hips, and everyone's will be in slightly different places, just snugly but not tightly. And mine is a little bit bigger than it was. It's 98. I didn't realise that. That's okay. Might be because I'm wearing leggings over the top as well. The second measurement, you want to pop it. Wearing a t-shirt's a good idea because you can pop it on your shoulder seam, and then come down to in between your bust and just figure out where you want that V to sit. And I've got mine at 28 centimeters as where sort of a comfortable distance. You could obviously go lower and have a plunging V, or you go a little bit higher and have a more modest V. Up to you. You can adjust this as well. I've added elastic to my neckline in this first one in particular because it was gaping a little bit, and so this just allows it to sit a little more snugly, but you don't need to add that elastic in, and you can just have it sitting flat as well. And then the last measurement we're going to take is across our shoulders. Now this is not going from shoulder to shoulder, so not from your bone to your bone. You want to take it from where you sort of, maybe where your bra straps are sitting is a good measurement to take, just so you can get an approximate idea of how wide you want your back to be. So I'm going to go from here to here, and that is about 26 centimeters, and that's around about how wide I want my back piece to be from where I'm going to start my armholes down. And that's the only 3 measurements you need to take. The other one you can, if you want to, is you could figure out kind of how long you want your dress to be. So you go from where your V is going to be and drop your tape measure down, and obviously it's a bit hard to do yourself, so you might want to get somebody else to do that. Now I made my dress piece to be about 100 centimeters long, and that made it quite long on me, and I actually ended up taking off some of the length. Some bias fabrics will drop a lot more than others, and so it's a bit hard to determine at this point, but I'd say depending on your height, between 90 and 110 centimeters will allow you to have either a full length dress or sort of a midi length dress. Okay, so we're going to do our planning now for our layout, and we're going to draw a sample layout. Now you could just go straight onto your fabric if you wanted to, but I just suggest doing a bit of a sketch so that when you go onto your fabric, you know exactly what your numbers are that you're looking for. So if you recall, we've got our 3 measurements that we've just taken: my 98 centimeter hip, 28 centimeters for the shoulder to the V, and 26 centimeters across the back shoulders. So we'll pop those to the side. Now the first thing we are going to do is we are going to draw our main dress panel, which has this sort of rectangular shape with a point. Now notice this is going to be the grain of our fabric here, so this is going to be the straight grain. So both of our front point of our dress will be sewn on the straight grain, but it will hang on the cross grain. So that's what's going to give it the bias. So the important measurement that we need here is our hip measurement, which was 98 centimeters, and then you're going to add a little bit of ease. Now in the example I drew in here, I was using my old measurements, which were 96, and I added 5 to make it 101. So I'll just keep using those measurements just to show you. So the maths that you're going to need to do is based on Pythagoras' theorem, which is for right angled triangles, and his theorem says that this side of the triangle plus this side of the triangle squared is equal to the hypotenuse, the slanty side of the triangle, also squared. So a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Now in this case, the c squared is going to be our hip measurement. And so we need to figure out this, and because we're making a symmetrical one, these are going to be equal to each other. So if you just go ahead and follow my maths, it all should work out nicely for you. So the first thing you're going to do is take your hip measurement plus the ease that you're adding. So my 96 plus 5 makes 101, and you're going to multiply it by itself, which gives you 10,201 centimeters. Then you're going to take that number and divide it by 2, because we've got 2 sides, and so we're dividing it by 2, so it's 5,100. And then you're going to take that number and find the square root button on your calculator, which usually looks like this, and you are going to find the square root of that number, which has ended up being 71.41 centimeters. And I'm just going to round that up to my nearest centimeter amount, and that is going to be what I would measure out along each side to make my first dress panel. Now on the PowerPoint that I've provided, I've done some example hip sizes and the measurements. So if you are close to these, you could use these, or you could do them exactly for your hip size and get a very personalized size. So you can see this in the yellow is the side of the triangle that we are going to be measuring out, and that is where we're going to start doing our plan. So I'm just going to show you how to draw out a quick plan based on your own sizing. So I'm going to go with 72. Now I'm actually going to add an extra centimeter, because I've just realized when I did this one I didn't add the seam allowance, so I'm going to actually make it 73. Now I'm going to draw it in a 1 to 10 scale, so I'm basically going to draw it in millimeters. So I'm going to measure out 72 millimeters here, but I'm going to go 73 instead. So that's going to be 73 millimeters. Just checking that it is recording. Yep. Okay, and then I'm going to do the same thing here, and I'm going to go 73 millimeters up the side here and put a little mark. Okay, then when I do it on my fabric, I'm going to take my giant paper triangle, but for this one I've made a baby paper triangle. And remember, when we fold it like this, this gives us a 45-degree angle, which is going to allow us to mark our angles accurately. Now imagine you have got your fabric here, so I'm just going to draw it in lightly, and this is the rest of your selvage edge. You've marked in your 73 millimeters here. Then the next thing you're going to do is take your little paper triangle, and you're going to put it with the point of the triangle along the rest of the selvage edge and with the point matching up with here, so that we can draw accurately the angle that we need. and you're just going to draw it straight onto your fabric. Don't worry about the length too much, just draw up until it hits the other side of the fabric if you like. So if your fabric is a rectangle that looks like this, you can just keep going with that one until it hits that. Okay, then you're going to do the same thing down here, and this time you turn it around so it's facing that way, so it's going along the other selvage edge, and you are going to draw this up here. Now what you may like to do just at this point to check you've done your maths right is you might want to measure from here to here, because this should be your hip measurement. And look at this. When I measure it, it's 102 millimeters, which is round about, I was going for 101, but that's pretty good. 102 millimeters, which is going to be my hip measurement. So this part of the skirt will be going around my hips. The next thing we want to do, and I'll just show you the plan here, is we want to make sure that we then go from this point here where we've got our 73 millimeters and we measure along, and this is going to determine the amount of fabric that you're going to need. So obviously if you have got bigger hips, so say you've got 110 centimeter hips, you would measure 84 centimeters along to here, and then the next one you're going to measure is you're going to add that measurement, measure it again, but plus another 4. And the reason for that is because this is going to include a bust dart, which is going to take up some of the fabric. We want these to end up being the same size as each other because they're going to be joined together to form that underbust seam. But because of the bust dart or the gathers, that is an optional choice that you could put into this one, we need this one to be around about 4 centimeters longer, 3 to 4 centimeters longer. I think I only did 2 actually on the one I made because I made quite small bust darts. So yeah, up to you, just a wee bit longer. So I'm going to measure out here 77-ish centimeters and mark that there. And then this is where our next measurement comes in. So if you recall, we measured from the top of our shoulder to where we want the V to sit, which was 28, and we're going to add 2 centimeters to that. So this one is going to be 28 centimeters plus 2 for our seam allowance. So that is going to be 30 millimeters in our little design. And again, put a little mark there. And then you are going to take your paper triangle again, and this time we want this corner, which is the 90 degree, and we are going to do a nice 90-degree angle drawing across here. Okay, and so it's going to form this shape, and this is going to be our bodice piece, and this is going to be our skirt piece. Now just to finish off our skirt piece, which I haven't done, this part here is the length of your dress. And so as I said, I didn't need mine to be very long because I'm not very tall, but you may like yours to be longer. So I think in my linen one, I did it about 100 centimeters, and in my stripy one, I did it about 110 centimeters, which ended up being way too long for me. So I cut it off. So this one, I'm just going to go 100 centimeters. And again, you want to use your square so that you get this nice and accurate. And we are going to draw a nice straight line across there. Finish it off with the ruler. Okay. So I have got my measurements here. Then wherever the top of my fabric is up here, so wherever my top corner is, I've just drawn a random piece of fabric here. I've got no idea how big it is. I want to again measure, so I want to mirror this bodice piece, and I want to measure 30 centimeters down. And I'm going to copy exactly the same dimensions as I did on the other one. So I'm going to measure 77 centimeters across. And then I'm going to get my triangle again, and I'm going to draw this piece in. And then measure my 90-degree angle from that mark there, my 30 centimeter one, down until it meets this one. And you should see that they both pretty much mirror each other. So 77 millimeters along there, 30 millimeters on the side, because that's my shoulder to my front V. And then basically you've got all these bits remaining, and so you are going to draw this in as a triangle. I'm just going to sketch that in by hand, and this is going to become one of your pockets. You're then going to cut some 4 centimeter wide bias strips, or this will be obviously 4 millimeter when you measure them. So 4 centimeter wide bias strips. And then whatever you've got here remaining is going to be for your ties for your dress if you want to add them. The other option with this remaining piece of fabric that I played around with in my stripy toile was I actually used it to make some little flutter sleeves, and that kind of looked cute, but it just looked a bit too much in my stripy fabric, so I decided not to go ahead and add that, and I used it to make ties instead. But you could do that if you prefer. So these parts here can either be ties, sleeves. These three are important though. You do need your 3 bias strips, and the bias strips are for binding the armhole and the neckline. Then you've got your remaining piece of fabric here, which is another triangle. If you prefer to have 2 triangle pockets, you could use it for that. Or what I'm going to do in the one I'm going to show you is I'm going to use it to stabilize my front seam and have like a little lining in there. Whoops. So it's going to be the lining for my front skirt. Okay, so we've got our basic pattern done. This is your skirt panel. We've got our 2 bodices. And then the last thing we want to do is our pockets, and this is where your last measurement is going to come in. So we know that we want the width across our back shoulders to be about 26 centimetres. So you're going to take that number and divide it by 2, which is going to give you 13 centimetres. So that's from the back seam out to your shoulders. That's about how long you want it to be. Remember though, we're going to have seam allowances, so I would take that and add 2 for your seam allowance at the back and also on each side. And so we're going to measure about 15 centimetres across here, and that's where we want our back armhole to start. Now it depends how wide you want your front straps to be. I made mine only about I think 4 centimetres, so I measured from here to here, and then I'm going to measure down, and mine were about 22 centimetres deep, and then I just simply drew a U shape. And you can draw that out on paper first and cut it out so you get them nice and accurate, but it's round about this shape. I can probably provide a PDF version of the pattern piece I used if you don't want to draw your own, but you may end up trying it on and then cutting out another little bit anyway. But it's round about, so this section here was 15 centimetres. That was my shoulder distance divided by 2, and then with 2 centimetres added. Round about here was 4 centimetres for my front shoulder straps. That ends up obviously being less, so if you wanted that to be a wee bit wider you could. So 4 to 5 centimetres, just that little front piece. And there we pretty much have our dress. You obviously do the same thing on the other side. The other thing you may want to mark in is your bust dart points, but I just tend to do that on the fabric, and those I added in 13 centimetres. I've suggested in my instructions though that you may like to mark those in once you've tried it on, tried your bodice on, and figured out where you want your bust darts to be, because you don't want them to be in the wrong place. And then the other thing I think I marked in was my pocket pieces, which were just the joining point. I think was about 16 centimetres in, was where my pockets started. I've just realised I forgot to talk about the size of fabric that you need, so we'll just go back and look at this one. So you've got your distance here that is your calculation that you've done. Mine, remember, was 73. If you have got hips that are 110 centimetres wide, it will be 84 centimetres. So whatever that is, you've measured along here, and then you've measured a further one plus 4 centimetres here. And this is what your main length of fabric is going to be. Now I can manage to fit mine into 150 centimetres. So that means if I have got 150 centimetre wide fabric, then that is my fabric width from here to here. And so then I just need the length. And for me, I could get it out of about a metre of fabric because I didn't want my dress to be too long. You could obviously make a much longer one, and then you would need to buy more and more. However, if you have got wider hips, you're obviously not going to fit it into the width of the fabric, so you will fit it into the length of the fabric. So for example, if you have got 110 size centimetre hips, then your 84 centimetre here, you're going to need another 88 centimetres, which is going to end up being 172 centimetres that you are going to need to buy. So this will become your length of fabric that you buy, and this will be the width. Now the advantage is that if you're doing it that way around, you actually don't need very much here, and so you can actually end up getting it out of quite a narrow width fabric. So some of those beautiful Japanese fabrics that are quite narrow, you can actually fit this dress out of that, which a normal bias dress you wouldn't be able to do, which is kind of cool. So you obviously, this would become the width of your fabric, so it might be like 110 or it might be 150. So say you have 150 wide fabric, but you need to buy 1.7 meters. You will end up with a little bit of extra fabric out the side here, and so you might be able to add some bigger sleeves or things like that, or I don't know, fully line the bodice if you wanted to. If you had enough, you could do 4 of these and you could do a fully lined bodice, which would be kind of cool. So the main thing to know though is that it is this bit here that's going to determine the biggest size of fabric that you need. So it's going to be that pretty much times 2 plus 4 centimeters will be your fabric length. Thanks.